The morning air on Kepler-7 space station felt cold and metallic. Yuna Kim walked through the long hallways toward the big learning room. Her boots made soft sounds on the shiny floor. Around her, aliens of all shapes and sizes moved in the same direction. Some were tall like trees. Others had fur or scales. A few glowed with soft light. Yuna pulled her uniform jacket tighter. The fabric felt rough against her skin. She was one of only 3 humans in the whole academy. The other students looked at her sometimes. Not mean looks, but curious ones. Like she was something interesting but not very important. The Galactic Military Academy was huge. The main learning hall could hold 1,000 students. Today it was full of new cadets on their first day. Voices filled the air. Some deep like thunder, others high like singing birds. Yuna had learned to tell different alien languages apart, but she still felt lost in the noise. She found a seat in the back row. It seemed like the safest place. The chairs were made for beings much larger than humans. Yuna's feet barely touched the floor. Next to her sat a Valkyrian warrior. His blue skin was covered in thick ridges and his arms were as big as Yuna's whole body. He nodded at her politely but said nothing. On her other side was a Zephyrite. Her body looked like it was made of purple crystal. Light moved through her like water. When she spoke to her friend, her voice sounded like wind chimes. Yuna smiled but felt very small between these powerful beings. The big doors at the front opened with a loud sound. All talking stopped. Instructor Thexkar walked into the room. He was a Draconian, one of the oldest warrior races in the galaxy. His scales were silver gray marked with old battle scars. He had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle. His yellow eyes swept across the room like he was counting every student. "Welcome to Advanced Weapons Theory." His voice rumbled through the hall. Even without speaking loud, everyone could hear him clearly. "Today you will learn about the Mark 7 plasma rifle. This weapon will save your life or end it. The choice depends on how well you understand it." Students sat up straighter. Yuna pulled out her tablet to take notes. Around her, aliens did the same with their own devices. Some wrote with tentacles. Others used claws or crystalline fingers that grew from their hands. Thexkar picked up a plasma rifle from the table. The weapon was almost as long as Yuna was tall. Its black metal surface had blue lines that glowed softly. This rifle can fire energy bursts hot enough to melt steel. It can shoot 100 times before needing new power. But, he paused and looked around the room, it breaks easily if you are stupid. Some students laughed nervously. Yuna did not. She had read about plasma weapons before coming to the academy. They were much more complex than the simple projectile weapons humans used. Energy weapons needed careful handling. One small mistake could make them explode. The instructor began taking the rifle apart. His 4 hands moved with practiced skill. Power core goes here. Cooling system connects like this. Trigger mechanism is simple, but the safety systems are not. Pieces of the weapon laid out on the table like a puzzle. "Now you will practice," Thexkar announced. "Each row will get practice rifles. You will take them apart and put them back together. Do it wrong and the weapon will not work. Do it very wrong and it might hurt you." Students began moving. Teaching assistants brought carts full of practice rifles down each row. The weapons looked real but had training cores instead of live power sources. Still, they could get hot if handled badly. Yuna watched the other students grab their rifles. The Valkyrian next to her picked up his weapon like it weighed nothing. The Zephyrite held hers carefully with thin crystal fingers. Other aliens used their claws, tentacles, or specialized gripping hands. When Yuna's turn came, she took her rifle with both hands. It was heavier than she expected. The metal felt warm to the touch. She found the first release catch and began following the instructor's steps. Around her, students worked at different speeds. Some finished quickly. Others struggled with the small parts. That was when Yuna noticed something wrong in the front row. A small alien was having trouble with her rifle. She had cat-like features, soft gray fur, large green eyes, and a long tail that moved when she felt nervous. She was clearly young, probably one of the youngest students in the academy. Her name tag said Misu in both human letters and alien symbols. Misu's rifle was making a soft humming sound. That was not normal. Training weapons should be silent when powered down. Yuna watched as the young alien tried to follow the instructor's movements. But something was wrong with her weapon. The humming got louder. Other students near Misu began to notice. They looked at her rifle with worried expressions. A few moved their chairs away from her. Yuna could see why. The weapon's warning lights were starting to flash. First yellow, then orange. The humming became a whining sound. Yuna knew that sound from her weapons training on Earth. It meant the power core was overheating. Even a training core could become dangerous if it got too hot. It might not kill anyone, but it could definitely hurt someone. Misu's tail was twitching fast now. Her ears were flat against her head. She was scared but trying not to show it. Her people were known for being brave, but also for being afraid of fire and energy weapons. It was built into their nature from millions of years of evolution. The whining got louder. Now even Instructor Thexakar noticed the sound. His big head turned toward the front row. His yellow eyes found the source of the problem immediately, but he was too far away. The room was big and he was on the other side. Even moving fast, he could not reach Misu in time. Other teaching assistants noticed too. They started moving toward the front row, but they were also too far away. The warning lights on Misu's rifle were now flashing red. Yuna looked around the room. Everyone could see the problem, but no one could reach Misu fast enough. The young alien was alone with a weapon that was becoming more dangerous every second, and then Misu made the worst possible choice. Instead of dropping the rifle and backing away, she tried to fix it herself. Misu stared at the flashing red lights on her rifle. The weapon felt hot in her hands, too hot. The whining sound was getting louder, and she could feel vibrations through the metal. Other students around her were moving away. She could smell their fear. Her people, the Felinians, had good noses. She could smell the sharp scent of overheating electronics. There was also the smell of ozone, like the air before a lightning storm. These were bad smells, dangerous smells, but Misu did not want to look weak in front of everyone. She was the youngest student in her class. Many others had already whispered that she was too young to be here. Her species was known for being quick and smart, but not for being good with machines. She wanted to prove them wrong. The rifle's power coupling was loose. Misu could see that much. It was the round part near the trigger that connected the power core to the firing system. During the practice, it had somehow come partially undone. Now energy was leaking out in small sparks. "I can fix this," she whispered to herself. Her voice was so quiet that only she could hear it. Around her, other students were finishing their practice. Some had already put their rifles back together perfectly. Others were still working, but their weapons were behaving normally. Only Misu's rifle was acting like an angry animal. She tried to remember what Instructor Thexakar had shown them. The power coupling should twist clockwise to tighten, but when she tried to turn it, nothing happened. It felt stuck. She tried again, using more force. The rifle whined louder. "Cadet Misu," called one of the teaching assistants. He was a tall alien with green skin and very long arms. "Is everything working correctly?" Misu's ears flattened against her head. She did not want to admit that she could not handle a simple practice weapon. "Yes, sir. Just finishing the reassembly." That was a lie, and she knew it. But pride made her say it anyway. She tried the power coupling again. This time she used both hands, gripping the rifle tightly while trying to turn the stubborn part. Her claws scratched against the metal as she strained. Something gave way suddenly, but not in a good way. The power coupling spun freely, too freely. It had not tightened. Instead, it had come completely loose. Now the connection between the power core and the rest of the rifle was barely holding together. Energy began to arc between the disconnected parts. Blue-white sparks danced across the weapon's surface. The smell of burning electronics filled the air. The whining sound became a high-pitched scream that hurt everyone's ears. Now all the students around Misu were definitely moving away. Chairs scraped against the floor as aliens pushed back from her table. Some stood up and backed toward the walls. The fear smell got stronger. Instructor Thexakar's big voice boomed across the room. "Everyone stay calm. Teaching assistants, please approach row 1. But Misu was not calm. Panic was taking over her thoughts. Her species' ancient fear of fire and energy was stronger than her training. Her heart was beating so fast it felt like a drum in her chest. Her breathing came in quick, shallow pants. The sparks were getting bigger. Some of them jumped from the rifle to her hands. They stung like tiny bites. She yelped and almost dropped the weapon. But some stubborn part of her mind still thought she could fix this. That was when she made the big mistake. Instead of dropping the rifle and running away, Misu tried to force the power coupling back into place. She grabbed the loose part with her left paw and tried to push it back where it belonged. The moment her furry paw touched the live electrical connection, everything went wrong. Energy flowed through her hand like liquid fire. The electrical current followed the path of least resistance, which was through her paw and up her arm. The fur on her hand began to smoke. The pads on her fingers, designed for gripping and climbing, were not meant to handle electrical current. Pain shot through her like nothing she had ever felt before. It was not just the burning sensation on her skin. The electrical shock made all her muscles tense at once. Her jaw clamped shut so hard she bit her own tongue. Her back arched. Her tail stood straight up. She screamed. It was not a human scream or even a normal felinian cry of pain. It was the sound a young creature makes when it is truly hurt and afraid. The sound cut through every species' instincts. Even the most different aliens in the room felt their hearts skip when they heard it. The rifle fell from Misu's hands and clattered on the floor. Smoke rose from its power coupling. The weapon was completely ruined now, but it was no longer dangerous. The power core had finally shut down automatically when the system detected a major fault. Misu clutched her injured paw against her chest. The fur was burned away in several places, showing red, angry skin underneath. Her paw pads were blackened. Some of them were bleeding. Tears streamed down her furry cheeks as she rocked back and forth in her chair. The pain was terrible, but the shame was worse. Everyone was staring at her. Everyone could see that she had failed at something that should have been simple. She was supposed to be one of the best students from her world. Instead, she had just proved that young Felinians really were too clumsy for advanced weapons. Other students were talking in whispers. She could hear some of their words even through her pain. Too young. Should not be here. Typical Felinian. Scared of energy weapons. I heard her scores were only average anyway. Each whisper felt like another small wound. Instructor Thek's car was moving toward her, but his big frame had to navigate between the rows of students. Teaching assistants were also coming, but they had to move carefully to avoid bumping into other cadets. Everyone wanted to help, but the room was too crowded for anyone to move quickly. Misu felt very alone. She was hurt, embarrassed, and surrounded by hundreds of aliens who now saw her as the student who could not handle basic equipment. Her paw throbbed with pain that seemed to pulse with her heartbeat. That was when she heard a voice beside her. "Let me see." The voice was calm and quiet, but there was something in it that made Misu look up. Standing next to her chair was one of the humans. The small alien with dark hair and serious eyes. She had moved so quietly that Misu had not heard her approach. The human girl was already kneeling beside Misu's chair. Her movements were smooth and sure, like someone who knew exactly what to do. Yuna did not think about rules or proper procedure. She did not worry about whether she was allowed to leave her seat. She saw someone hurt and moved to help. It was that simple. She had jumped over 2 rows of chairs to reach the front. Other students watched in surprise as the small human moved with quick, smooth steps. Humans were not known for being fast or strong, but Yuna moved like she was built for this kind of action. When she reached Misu's side, Yuna knelt down next to the injured alien's chair. Her voice was calm and steady. "Let me see your paw. I can help." Misu looked at her with wide, wet eyes. The young Felinian was still crying from pain and embarrassment. She held her burned paw close to her chest, afraid to let anyone touch it. "It's okay," Yuna said softly. "I know about burns. I can make the pain less." There was something about the human's voice that made Misu trust her. Maybe it was because Yuna was also small compared to most students, or maybe it was because she spoke without any fear or judgment. She just wanted to help. Misu slowly held out her injured paw. Yuna examined the burn carefully. She did not touch the injured area, but she looked at it from different angles. Her eyes moved like someone who had seen injuries before. The burn covered most of Misu's paw pad and part of her fingers. The fur was gone in several places, and the skin underneath was red and starting to blister. "Second-degree electrical burn," Yuna said quietly, more to herself than to Misu. "Not too deep, but it needs treatment right away." She reached into her utility belt and pulled out a small white device. It looked like a thick pen with a small screen on one side. Misu had never seen anything like it. "Medical scanner," Yuna explained as she held it over Misu's paw. "It tells me how bad the injury is and what kind of treatment you need." The device made soft beeping sounds and displayed numbers on its screen. Yuna read the results and nodded to herself. She put the scanner away and pulled out a small tube. "This is burn gel," she said, showing the tube to Misu. "It will stop the pain and help your skin heal. It works on all kinds of biology, not just human." Misu nodded. The pain in her paw was still very strong. She was willing to try anything that might help. Yuna squeezed a small amount of clear gel onto her finger. This might feel cold at first, but then the pain will go away. She very gently applied the gel to Misu's burned paw. Her touch was light and careful. She made sure to cover all the injured areas without pressing too hard on the damaged skin. The gel felt cool and soothing. Almost immediately, the terrible burning pain began to fade. Misu's ears perked up with relief. For the first time since the accident, she was not hurting. Better? Yuna asked. Much better, Misu whispered. Thank you, but Yuna was not finished. While keeping one hand ready to help Misu, she reached over and picked up the damaged rifle with her other hand. What are you doing? Misu asked. Fixing this, Yuna replied simply. Other students had gathered around to watch. They whispered among themselves in different languages. Most of them were amazed that the human had medical supplies with her. None of their species carried first aid equipment as standard gear. It seemed overly careful to them, but now they were even more surprised. The human was holding the broken rifle like she understood how it worked. The weapon was still smoking slightly. Most students would not want to touch it at all. Yuna turned the rifle over in her hands, looking at it from all sides. Her eyes traced the weapon's design with the same careful attention she had given to Misu's injury. She found the damaged power coupling and examined it closely. I see the problem, she said. She began taking the rifle apart, but she was not following the same steps that Instructor Thexkar had shown them. Instead, she seemed to know shortcuts and easier ways to access the internal parts. Her fingers found hidden catches and release points that other students had not even noticed. The Valkyrian warrior from Yuna's row had moved closer to watch. How do you know how to do that? He asked in his deep voice. I read the technical manual last night, Yuna answered without looking up from her work. And I worked on similar weapons during my basic training. That was not the whole truth. Yuna had actually read 3 different technical manuals about plasma weapons. She had also studied the maintenance procedures for energy weapons used by 6 different alien species. She liked to be prepared. More students crowded around. Even some of the teaching assistants stopped what they were doing to watch the human work. They had never seen a first-year student handle a weapon with such confidence. Yuna identified the broken parts and the reason for the malfunction. The power coupling was installed backwards, she explained to the watching students. And someone cross-threaded the connections during manufacturing. That's why it got stuck when you tried to tighten it, she said to Misu. She continued working, her movements quick but careful. The safety systems also had a fault. They should have shut down the power core before it got hot enough to cause injury. From her toolkit, Yuna pulled out replacement parts. She had brought spare components for several different weapon types. Again, other students found this level of preparation unusual. Humans, they were beginning to realize, planned for many different problems. Why do you carry so many supplies? Asked a crystalline Zephyrite. Because things break, Yuna replied. And when they break, someone needs to fix them. She swapped out the damaged power coupling for a new one, installed it correctly, and began putting the rifle back together. Her hands moved with steady precision. She did not hesitate or second-guess herself. Within minutes, the rifle was completely reassembled. Yuna powered it up to test her repairs. The weapon hummed softly and displayed all green lights on its status panel. She ran through the standard diagnostic sequence, checking each system carefully. Every test passed perfectly. The rifle was not just working again, it was working better than it had when new. The amphitheater had become very quiet. Students who had been working on their own rifles stopped to watch the human. Even the teaching assistants paused in their duties to see what was happening in the front row. Yuna held the repaired rifle and ran one final diagnostic check. The weapon's display screen showed perfect readings across all systems. Power flow was stable. Cooling systems were working properly. All safety mechanisms were active and responding correctly. She set the rifle down gently on Misu's table and turned back to check on the injured Felinian. How does your paw feel now? She asked. Misu flexed her fingers carefully. The burn gel had completely stopped the pain. Her paw was still tender, but she could move it without crying. It feels much better. The burning is gone. Good, Yuna said. She pulled out a small roll of bandages from her medical kit. I should wrap this to keep it clean while it heals. As she worked on Misu's bandage, conversations began to start up around the room again. But now they were different conversations. Students were talking about what they had just seen. Did you see how fast she moved? She had medical supplies ready. How did she know how to fix that rifle? She made it look easy. A tall draconian student in the third row spoke to his neighbor. My people have been working with plasma weapons for 300 years. I have never seen anyone repair one that quickly. His neighbor, a being made of what looked like living metal, nodded in agreement. The weapon was completely destroyed. She rebuilt it better than new. Near the back of the room, a group of insectoid aliens were clicking their mandibles in excited discussion. In their language, this was the sound of admiration. The human has many skills, one of them said. Medical training, technical knowledge, quick thinking. Very impressive for such a young being. Yuna finished wrapping Misu's paw with neat, clean bandages. The young Felinian could now use her hand normally, though she would need to be careful for a few days while the burn healed. Thank you, Misu said quietly. I was so scared. I thought I had ruined everything. You did not ruin anything, Yuna replied. The weapon had manufacturing defects. It would have failed eventually, no matter who used it. You were just unlucky that it happened during your practice. This made Misu feel much better. She had been thinking that she was too clumsy or stupid to handle advanced weapons. Knowing that the rifle itself was broken made the accident seem less like her fault. Instructor Thexkar had finally reached the front row. His massive form moved carefully between the student tables. When he saw the repaired rifle, he stopped and stared at it. Cadet Kim, he said, his deep voice carrying clearly through the room. Did you repair this weapon? Yes, sir, Yuna answered simply. Thexkar picked up the rifle and examined it closely. His 4 hands turned it over, checking every connection and joint. His yellow eyes looked at the display readings. His scarred face showed surprise. This rifle is performing above factory specifications, he said. The power efficiency is better than standard. The cooling system is running cooler than normal. How did you achieve this? Yuna stood up from where she had been kneeling beside Misu's chair. The original assembly had several small problems, sir. When I fixed the main fault, I also corrected the other issues I found. What other issues? Thexkar asked. The thermal regulator was installed with the wrong tension settings. The power distribution matrix had a minor calibration error, and the targeting system's alignment was off by 0.03 degrees. The instructor's eyes widened slightly. These were very small problems that most technicians would never notice. They would not cause a weapon to fail, but they would make it perform less efficiently. Finding and fixing them required both knowledge and attention to detail. You identified all of these problems while treating an injured student? Thexkar asked. Yes, sir. I can see multiple things at the same time. This was true. Humans had evolved to be very good at tracking many different threats and opportunities at once. Yuna could watch for danger while gathering food, or treat an injury while staying alert for other problems. It was part of how her species had survived on their home world. Other students were listening to this conversation with great interest. They were learning things about humans that they had never known before. Most species were specialists. They were very good at one thing, but needed help with others. Humans seemed to be good at many different things all at once. A student in the second row raised her hand. She was from a species that looked like walking trees, with bark-like skin and leaves instead of hair. Instructor Thexkar, is it normal for first-year students to carry medical equipment? The instructor looked at Yuna's utility belt, which still had several medical devices and tools visible. No, Cadet Vera. Most students do not bring first aid supplies to weapons class. I bring medical supplies everywhere, Yuna said. Accidents can happen anywhere. It is better to be ready. And the replacement parts for the rifle? Asked another student. I read that plasma weapons sometimes have component failures during training. So I brought spare parts. Thexkar nodded slowly. In his many years of teaching, he had never had a student who prepared so thoroughly for class. Most cadets brought only what was required. This human had prepared for problems that might happen. Cadet Kim, the instructor said, where did you learn weapons repair? I studied the technical manuals, sir, and I practiced on similar weapons during my basic training on Earth. What was your specialty during basic training? I did not have a specialty, sir. I trained in medical care, weapons maintenance, communications, navigation, and small unit tactics. The room became even quieter. Most alien species chose one area of focus during their military training. They became experts in that area but learned little about others. This human had trained in many different fields. Why did you not specialize? Thexkar asked. Yuna thought about how to explain this. Among humans, being able to do many different jobs was normal. Human military units were small, and everyone needed to be able to help with everything. But for other species, this was unusual. In human military tradition, every soldier should be able to do any job that needs doing, she said finally. We learn many skills so we can help wherever help is needed. The instructor nodded again. He was beginning to understand something important about humans. They were not the weak, simple species that many others believed them to be. They were adapters. They learned what they needed to learn and did what needed to be done. He looked around the room at all the watching students. This had become an unexpected learning experience for everyone. Instructor Thexakar stood holding the repaired rifle, looking at the small human who had just done something remarkable. Around them, hundreds of students from dozens of different worlds watched in silence. The only sounds were the soft hums of the station's life support systems and the quiet breathing of many different species. The draconian instructor had seen many things in his long military career. He had fought in 3 wars and trained thousands of cadets. He had watched brilliant students master complex subjects and seen talented soldiers perform amazing feats. But he had never seen anything quite like what had just happened. A first-year human cadet had treated a serious injury and completely repaired a broken weapon at the same time. She had done both jobs perfectly, without asking for help or making any mistakes. And she had done it all quietly, without trying to get attention or praise. Cadet Kim, Thexkar said, his deep voice carrying to every corner of the room. Yuna looked up at him. She had finished helping Misu and was now standing at attention, the way students were supposed to when an instructor spoke to them directly. Yes, sir? The instructor paused. He had been planning to scold the human for leaving her assigned seat without permission. Academy rules were clear about staying in place during lectures. But those same rules also said that helping injured comrades was every cadet's first duty. More importantly, what she had done showed exactly the kind of thinking that made great officers. She had seen a problem, understood what needed to be done, and acted quickly to solve it. She had not waited for orders or worried about whether she had permission. Ma'am, Thexkar said, and the whole room seemed to hold its breath. The word hung in the air like something physical. Ma'am was not a word that instructors used for students. It was the formal address for superior officers, or for someone who had earned respect through their actions. Yuna's eyes widened slightly, but she did not speak. Would you be willing to assist with today's demonstration? The instructor continued. I believe the other students could learn from your expertise. The implications of this request rippled through the amphitheater like waves. An instructor was asking a first-year cadet to help teach the class. This never happened. Students learned from instructors, not the other way around. But every student in the room had seen what Yuna could do. They had watched her handle both medical and technical emergencies with calm skill. They had heard her explain complex weapon systems in simple terms. Some of them realized they might actually learn more from her than from the normal lesson plan. Of course, sir, Yuna replied. I would be happy to help. Thexkar nodded and turned to address the entire class. Today's lesson has taken an unexpected turn. We have learned that preparation and versatility are just as important as following procedures. Cadet Kim has demonstrated both. He held up the repaired rifle. This weapon was completely non-functional. Now it performs better than factory standards. The student who repaired it also provided immediate medical care to an injured comrade. She did both jobs simultaneously, without compromising either one. Students began to whisper among themselves. Some were impressed. Others were confused. A few seemed almost jealous that a human had shown skills they did not possess. Sir, called out a student from the middle rows. He was from a species that looked like walking crystals, with a voice that sounded like breaking glass. How do we know the rifle is really fixed? Shouldn't it be tested by a professional technician? It was a fair question and not entirely friendly. Some students still found it hard to believe that a human could be better at weapons repair than trained specialists from more advanced species. Thexkar smiled, showing sharp teeth. An excellent point, Cadet Zenth. Perhaps we should test the weapon. He walked over to the firing range at the side of the classroom. It was a small area with energy-absorbing targets for safe weapons testing. The instructor loaded a practice power cell into the rifle and aimed at the center target. He fired 3 shots. Each one hit exactly where he aimed. The weapon made no unusual sounds and showed no signs of stress or malfunction. Perfect performance, he announced. Better than most rifles straight from the manufacturer. The crystal student said nothing more, but his light dimmed slightly in what his species did to show embarrassment. Thexkar walked back to the front of the class. Now, Cadet Kim will demonstrate proper rifle maintenance and emergency repair procedures. I suggest you all pay close attention. For the next hour, Yuna taught the class things that were not in their textbooks. She showed them how to identify early warning signs of weapon failure. She explained how to perform field repairs with limited tools. She demonstrated how to improve weapon performance by correcting small manufacturing defects. But more than that, she showed them a different way of thinking about problems. Instead of just following procedures, she taught them to understand why those procedures worked. Instead of just memorizing steps, she helped them see the connections between different systems. Students asked questions that they would never have asked the instructor. Yuna was closer to their own age and spoke in simpler terms. She did not make them feel stupid for not understanding something the first time. Misu, still sitting in the front row with her bandaged paw, watched everything with wide eyes. The human who had helped her was now teaching weapons theory to students from species that had been building advanced technology for thousands of years. "How do you remember all of this?" asked a tall alien with blue skin and extra arms. "I practice," Yuna replied. "I take apart old equipment and put it back together. I read about how different species solve similar problems. I try to understand not just what to do, but why it works." "That sounds like a lot of work," said another student. "It is," Yuna agreed, "but when someone needs help, I want to be ready to give it." Near the end of the class period, a teaching assistant approached Instructor Thexkar and whispered something in his ear. The instructor nodded and looked thoughtful. "Cadet Kim," he called out, "please see me after class. There's something I would like to discuss with you." When the other students had filed out of the amphitheater, Yuna walked over to the instructor's desk. Misu came with her, still grateful for the help she had received. "Sir," Yuna said, "I have just received a message from the Academy administration," Thexkar said. "Word of today's events has reached the Commandant's office. You are being invited to skip the basic weapons course and move directly to advanced technical training." Yuna blinked in surprise. Skipping courses was almost unheard of, especially for first-year students. Additionally, the instructor continued, "You are being offered a position as a student instructor. You would help teach other cadets while continuing your own studies." "Sir, I'm honored, but I don't think I'm ready for that level of responsibility." Thexkar's scarred face showed something that might have been amusement. "Cadet Kim, you have just proven that you are more ready than students who have been here for years. You saw what needed to be done and did it. That is what we hope to teach all our cadets." He paused and looked directly into her eyes. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. We need officers who can handle any situation that arises. Today you showed us that humans may be exactly what we have been looking for." Yuna thought about this for a moment. Then she nodded. "I accept, sir. I'll do my best to help other students learn." As she and Misu walked out of the amphitheater together, word was already spreading through the academy. The quiet human in the back row had just changed how everyone thought about what it meant to be a soldier. And this was only her first day.